Alrighty. Hey everybody, Steve here, and today we're going to be talking about being retired in Korea. Again, I'm Steve, the retired hobby tech guy, and for those of you who don't know, what my wife and I ended up doing was retiring early. We went overseas and boom, we landed up here in Korea. My wife has Korean ancestry, so that's how we were able to get our visas for Korea because it doesn't have retirement visas like, the Philippines or Thailand or, places like that. So with that, we sold everything: house, cars, guns, ammo, truck, everything in the kitchen junk drawer. And we ended up with a couple of suitcases, and boom, we're here in Korea. We started a new life. And the great thing about retiring overseas, and for us retiring in Korea, was that we were able to retire early. So bonus for that. That ended up being a really good thing because the way things were going, it didn't look like I was going to be able to retire until about 70, with all the rising expenses in the United States. So it was kind of like, yeah, I don't think this is going to be good. and you look at life expectancy and it ends up, it's like, what is it, like 70, 78 years old or something like that. So it was really kind of messed up. But when we found out we could retire in Korea with my wife's ancestry, we jumped on it and we were able to retire early. Matter of fact, we retired at age 54. So we spent a year on Oahu and then we came to Korea and we've been here since then. And yeah, time has flown by and it's been really good. But I've gotten a number of people that have asking me about questions like this right here. Money, banking, credit cards, how do things work on the money side of being retired overseas? And for a lot of people, this is something that they don't go over. There's a lot of people that will do videos and basically, it's good. You have influencers and YouTubers that will go to a country, they'll live there for, a couple of weeks and say, oh, this is what you can expect to pay when you're retired in this country. But really they're just tourists. They're not paying property tax. They're not buying a property. They're just kind of doing Airbnbs, monthly rentals. There's a big difference between going on vacation for a month and saying, hey, yeah, this is a good place to live overseas, than with people that actually do it. And not to take anything away from them, but you need to look at the other side of the coin as well. So we're going to talk about that. And one of these big things is money. So people have asked me, well, what do you do? Because people have different types of retirement. I have a military retirement. I have other funds coming in. Some people have Social Security. I'm a few years away from drawing that. I'm going to be 59 in a few months. So 59, 60, 61, 62. So I got about 3 years left to draw my retirement. And, how do you get those funds overseas? Well, in some countries, you have U.S. banks that have branches in foreign countries, and so you can open bank accounts there. In other countries, you might be in an area where a U.S. branch is not available, so you'll have to have a foreign bank account. And with that, there might be some visa considerations as well. If you have some retirement visas dictate and say, well, you have to have X amount of money deposited into our banking system, certain banks or whatever, and maintain a certain balance. Korea is not one of those places, but you need to be aware of those things. And so when we talk about banking, how do we transfer funds? Well, for us personally, what we end up doing, because I'm a military retiree, I'm able to have my funds in Navy Federal Credit Union. Excuse me. So thankfully, where we retired at here in Korea is close to a local military base, which just so happens to have a Navy Federal Credit Union. So I have access, my wife has access to the military base. So what we end up doing is before we came, we made sure that all our funds and accounts that have income coming in was switched over to a Navy Federal Credit Union account. And we actually signed up for that when we were on Oahu. when you get here to Korea and you try to go on post as a retiree, they won't let you open an account. At least that's what I've been told. And so, yeah, and actually, I think I sent an email, if memory serves me correct. I sent an email to Navy Federal Credit Union to Korea, and they said, yeah, you have to have an account prior to getting here. So, unless you're military retiree doesn't count. So with that, we opened our account before we can get onto the military base. And what we'll end up doing is we'll withdraw the funds that we need, and then we go off post, and then we exchange it at a money exchange store. Now, you might be asking, well, why would you want to do that? It's all about the exchange rate. Matter of fact, the other day we were at Navy Federal Credit Union, the bank on post. They also have Community Bank, but I don't recommend Community Bank. Navy Federal Credit Union has way better interest rates on their CDs and other things. They're really, truly a full-service bank. The Military Community Bank isn't a real full-service bank, and their interest rates are crap. So it is what it is. But with that, if we get our money and we get it exchanged at the banks on post, you will get a lower exchange rate than what you would get if you went off post to a money exchange place. That is where you're going to get the best exchange for your US dollars into Korean won or Korean currency. And you'll even get better rates at an exchange place than even at a Korean bank. So for those people that are like, well, why do you have to go that extra step? Because we want to keep money in our pocket. So that's why we do that. So the process that we do is we get paid, we go on post to the bank on post, we withdraw funds, we go to a money exchange place and get good exchange rates, and then we'll exchange that into won, and then we'll take it and we'll deposit it into our Korean bank accounts. Some people have asking, which leads to the next question, asking, well, what does it take to get a joint account? Well, I'm sorry to tell you, but there are no joint bank accounts in Korea. In the United States, you can have a joint checking, joint savings. You and your spouse can have access to those funds. That's not a thing here in Korea. So each one of you is going to have your own separate account. And that's just the way that they do business here. They don't do joint accounts. I don't know why, but that's just, we asked, well, don't you have joint accounts? When we opened our Korean bank account, and they're like, no, we don't do that. Each person has to have their own individual account. And I think part of this stems from this device right here, cell phones. Your identity is tied to your cell phone. Your banking is tied to your cell phone, which is tied to your identity, your Korean registration card, or green card as we would call it in the United States. Your passport, your name, all of that information has to be the same, and it's all on your phone. And then the same thing in your Korean bank account, all of that information has to be the same. So you have to spell your name exactly the same, put it in the exact same order. Excuse me. So what I suggest is when you have your passport and you apply for your Korean registration card, or basically your green card here in Korea for your visa gets approved, excuse me, they will require you to use the name that you have in your passport. Just make sure that it's written out exactly the same. So if it's last name, first name, middle initial, that is what you'll use. Don't put commas, don't put dashes. You will get into some very serious problems if your passport name and your Korean identification card, your registration card, it has a different name spelling, or there's a comma, and this one doesn't have a comma, and that one has a comma. And even with online banking, with your cell phones and Naver and Coupang and stuff like that, even with Amazon, if your name does not match your Korean registration card and doesn't match your passport, there's a lot of things that will get held up. And so I'll just tell you that from the get-go. So be very particular and double check your paperwork. So back to the banking thing. They don't have joint bank accounts, so you'll each get a separate bank account. and it's just the way it is. Many Korean banks, it's very different here. Like if there's a let's say Bank of the West, you have a Bank of the West account in the United States, and you go to another state and they have Bank of the West, and you go in, you can access your account, you can get work done on your account, you can withdraw funds, and so on and so forth, because it's all Bank of the West, right? Well, here in Korea, they have different branches, but even if you have the same branch, you might not be able to access your account from that branch. I know, it is weird. Because they treat banks almost like franchises, and the bank accounts are not joined together. There's no like central database for, NH Bank or Korea Bank or whatever bank there is. And you go into any branch throughout Korea, you cannot access your account. We found this out when we were getting some visa paperwork done, and we needed some funds. And close to the government office that we were at, there was an NH Bank. So the wife goes in there. She wanted to withdraw some funds, and they're like, "Yeah, no, you can't do that." And she goes, "Well, here's my bank card. Here's my bank book." And they're like, "Oh no, you have to have an account with this branch, and then you could be able to access funds once you put money into that account." So yeah, it's definitely kind of a franchise type thing. But on the other hand, you have ATMs that you could access and get funds. So yeah, it's just kind of a weird thing. And there'll be different policies between branches of the same bank. It's weird. We had some people that we knew where we got our bank account at. For my wife and I, she's an American citizen with Korean ancestry. I'm an American, obviously. And we went to this NH Bank. We got our bank account. But then when some other people went to a different NH Bank, they would not open an account for them because they were foreigners. And apparently they had gotten burned by a number of foreigners that had come to Korea and done work, different nationalities and whatever. And so the policy of that branch is that they didn't want to open any accounts with foreigners. And you might think, oh, that's discrimination. And it's like, well, find another bank. It is what it is. So you will find, and that's part of the problem. When people talk about banking in Korea and saying, oh, well, you can open an account anywhere. No, you can't. There's another one where there was a discussion going online, and this guy was telling me that, what was he saying? Oh, if you only speak, read, and write Korean, you wouldn't have any problems. And it's like, no, that's not necessarily true. Because it doesn't matter, like the people that went to the bank and, same situation as us, the spouse was used to be a Korean national, became a U.S. citizen, read, wrote, and spoke Korean, and he ended up, his Korean's really sharp. He actually worked on the Korean economy in big companies, and so he spoke Korean expertly, better than most Koreans. And so they end up going to the Korean bank, and they wouldn't open up a bank account for him, even though they read and spoke and wrote Korean and understood it and, passed proficiency exams, for him and whatever. They just wouldn't open an account. So it all depends on what you're doing and where you are. And I think that's where a lot of the misinformation comes from, is because people will say, well, they did it here at this bank, so they must do it at all banks. No, that's not the case at all. So, like, for example, another situation is I had an individual who actually is living in Korea. He's up north somewhere, not North Korea, but up in Seoul. And he was saying that foreigners couldn't buy property. And so since we're kind of talking about money, we'll take a little detour on buying property. Well, it ends up, he said, no, they won't let you buy property in Korea. They don't allow foreigners to buy property. And it's like, I had just bought this apartment. And it's like, yeah, you can. And he's like, no, you can't. I'm like, I have the deed to my apartment where I paid for it in cash, and boom, it's mine. So where did you get this information? What happened was He tried to buy a property in Korea, not with cash. He tried to get financing, and his debt to income ratio didn't satisfy the requirements of the Korean bank that he was at, so they would not give him a loan. So through his realtor, it ended up maybe it was a miscommunication or whatever it was. You can't buy property, when in actuality, it wasn't that foreigners can't buy property in Korea. You just can't get financing to buy a property in Korea until you get your shit together. So very big difference. And I think that's where a lot of the misinformation comes from, is personal experience. And then they kind of paint that as, well, nobody can buy property in Korea. And foreigners can actually buy property in Korea. You don't even have to be in Korea to buy property. You don't have to be on a visa to buy property in Korea. You don't even have to set foot in Korea. You could be on a tourist visa and come and buy property if you want to. There's some extra steps involved and so on and so forth, but foreigners can buy property in Korea. So back to the money thing. Korean banking is very interesting, where in the United States, you can have multiple bank accounts. If I was back in the US, I could take a day and I could open up as many bank accounts in as many different branches as I wanted to, as physically possible. And there would be no problem with that. Here in Korea, it ends up we go to the bank. And again, this is the one branch that we went to. So I'm not saying this is every single Korean bank, but in our experience, so again, I'm not making it a blanket rule, is that they told us, they said, well, okay, each of you has your own bank account, because they don't do joint bank accounts. And you have to wait 30 days to open up another account anywhere else. And it's like, whoa, what are you talking about? And they're like, well, apparently there's a rule, and there's a lot of cyber crime that are going on. And so a lot of defrauding, and people open up bank accounts and then for nefarious reasons. And so they put requirements saying, hey, you can open up a bank account according to this one branch. I'm not saying Korea as a whole, but this one branch, the branch that we went to, said, yeah, you have to wait 30 days before you can open up another account either here or somewhere else. And I was like, okay, we'll just take it as it is. The other thing that they ended up having was a withdrawal limit. Yeah, so we moved here to Korea. We're going to buy an apartment, we're going to buy a car, we're going to buy furniture, and all the things that you buy, big ticket items. And the bank is saying, no, you have a limit of withdrawal of 1 million won, which is, I don't know, $800-900, whatever the exchange rate is. And it's like, well, how do we, we're like, whoa, how long does this last? Well, it ended up, we had to have 3 months of auto paying certain bills. So like your phone bill or your utilities or something like that, have 3 months of recorded online automatic bill pay. And then you would get that limit lifted. And even then you have to go back to the bank, or at least we had to go back to the bank and say, hey, here's the deal. The time is up. Is our withdrawal limit lifted? And they're like, oh, yep, it's now lifted. You can withdraw as much money as you want. But let's backtrack a little bit. And when we're still under that withdrawal limit, we're like, well, we need to buy a car. So how do we do that? Well, there's exceptions to the rule, and our branch ended up saying, oh, you want to buy a car? Well, you just need to give us the contract, the copy of the contract of where you're going to buy the car, and they'll release the funds. Which is weird when you're coming from the United States, because if somebody in an American bank told you that, you'd be up in arms. You'd be, damn it, it's my money. You're going to give me my money. I'm going to spend it where I want it. Why are you not letting me have access to my money? In Korea, it's just one of the things that you need to get used to. So when they say that you can't do a certain thing, you also have to ask questions and say, well, is there an exemption? Is there a way, because we're doing this, this, and this? And unfortunately, a lot of Korean banks, they think that you have lived in Korea forever and you know everything there is, just like every other Korean national, about Korean banking. But if you've been away like us, we were gone for 20, 30 years or whatever it was, we came on vacation, but we didn't do banking. So we didn't know anything about Korean banking. And back when we were here, banking was very different. It's evolved over time, and online banking and bill pays and phones and all that stuff. Those weren't a thing back when we got married about 35 years ago. So, yeah, but definitely ask questions on that. So, yeah, it's very different to Korean banking, and some banks have better customer service for foreigners than other banks. So look into that. There was recently an article in the Korean news, I think it was the Korea Times or Korean Herald, one of the two. It was talking about how banks are really pushing more and more for foreign representation and having web pages and apps where you can change it from Korean to English or whatever language, the big languages, because of the number of foreigners that are coming to Korea to work. Because it's an aging population here in Korea, so they're getting foreign workers to come in. So they're finally making strides towards their banking systems having foreign language accessibility for those workers and then people like us. So there's different levels of that. Some banks have customer service that you can call and speak to an English-speaking representative. Our bank locally doesn't have that. But it's just kind of, you're going to deposit money, withdraw money, and then that's pretty much it. And then if you want to do some online bill pay, we haven't even done online bill pay. We just went to the bank and said, hey, we need to do automatic draft for like our cell phone service. So for my cell phone, the funds come out of my bank account. For my wife's, it comes out of her bank account. We just make sure we have enough money in those accounts to cover, the phone, utilities, or whatever it is. So once it's set up, and you can either bring somebody who speaks Korean or you can use translation services. Again, it's a little slow when you use Google Translate or whatever, but you can stumble through it. My Korean's not to the point of where I can engage in meaningful banking conversations. So, yeah, it is what it is. Now, let's get to the next point we're going to talk about. Excuse me. Korean banking. You're a U.S. citizen. You're living in a visa here in Korea. There are some tax considerations that you need to keep in mind. If you have a Korean bank account and you have more than $10,000 or more in that account, you have to file a foreign banking report, an FBAR, with the IRS. And it's not that they're going to tax you anymore or anything like that. It's just for fraud, or you're not drug dealers or anything like that. You're going to report the money saying, yes, I have a Korean bank account or multiple Korean bank accounts, and the money is more than $10,000. You need to report that to the IRS just so they know that's it. It's kind of like when you withdraw funds in the United States and it's like $9,000 or more. That gets reported to the IRS. It doesn't, the banks in America don't care. They just need to say, hey, well, what are you doing this for? Oh, I'm buying a car, a boat, or whatever it is. And, oh, okay, well, hey, have fun, and they do the report. But the FBAR is something that you need to be aware of because there's fees and penalties involved if you do not file the FBAR and you have a Korean bank account with $10,000 or more. You can actually get dinged for that. And that, I don't want to see people losing money. So keep that in mind. For us personally, we don't keep that much money in our Korean banks. So it's really a no big deal for us. We get better exchange, or not better exchange rates. We get better interest rates at the Navy Federal Credit Union on post, so that's where we keep the majority of our money. It's not really a big thing. The other thing about banking, credit cards. People have asked me and said, well, do you have to have a Korean credit card to live in Korea? Nope. I've used U.S. credit cards, Visa, MasterCard, all throughout Korea. There are some smaller stores and restaurants, mom and pops type places that still either they have the Korean bank card, they don't process U.S. bank cards or credit cards, which is really rare these days. Some just only operate in cash, and those are even rarer still. But the majority of places that you're going to go to, I haven't found any problems using a U.S. credit card, Visa card, and things like that. So it'll come up on your statement, and of course it'll be, weird names and stuff like that. But oh yeah, that's that, $7 or $8, and that's when we had coffee at this one place or whatever. With that, people have asked me, how do you do banking with a credit card, or do you have a bank card, a Korean bank card? Yes, the answer is yes. We have a Korean bank card. So when you open up your Korean bank account, you will get a bank card that is tied to your account, kind of like a debit card. Then you could also apply for a Korean credit card, just like you would in the United States, and then you would pay that off. And there's points and benefits to some of those things. But for us, personally, we just don't see the need, or there's no desire, there's no benefit for us to get such a thing. So, yeah, it's just not one of those things that we just don't need it. If there are things that we need, we always have enough money in our Korean bank accounts, and so it's covered by our Korean bank card, which is tied to our account, and that's not a big problem there. But even if that doesn't work, we can use our American credit cards, and the places that we go, we haven't had any problems. There might be a difference in the exchange rate because your credit card is based on US dollar and not in Korean won. So there'll be this transaction of the exchange rate. So you might lose a little bit, but you're living overseas. It is what it is, But that's why we like the Korean bank card, is because we don't lose money on those transaction fees and overseas fees. There are some U.S. banks, and before you get a U.S. bank and a credit card, ask about their overseas fees. Some banks will really nail you to the wall. Other banks will refund you that amount or have minimal amounts for foreign transactions. So that's something to take into consideration. Let's see what else we got going on. What do we got? Oh, yeah. Going over my notes, some people have asked me, well, if you don't have a bank on a military base that you have access to, and there are some people that have asked me about this. There's some veterans that didn't retire. There's people that just married somebody who has Korean ancestry. They come and they retire in Korea. They don't have access to the military banks on the military bases. So how do you get funds to your Korean bank account? There's a couple of ways that you can do that. One is through a wire transfer. You do a wire transfer from a U.S. bank to a Korean bank, and you're going to incur some fees. Money will exchange from U.S. dollar to Korean won. You're probably going to lose out on the exchange rate, like I said, but it is what it is. If that's a deal killer for you, you probably shouldn't retire in Korea or retire overseas. Because if that's a point of contention to the point of where you're going to stand your ground and you're not going to deal with that, you probably shouldn't retire overseas. But just remember that if you do retire overseas, know that there are some possible fees that could be incurred by doing money transfers. And we're going to take a look at some of this. So with this, boom. Alrighty, here's what we got. Let's break down this whole deal with wiring money. International wire transfer has several components. U.S. Bank's outgoing international wire fee. U.S. Bank typically charges around $50 for an ongoing international wire transfer sent in U.S. dollars. So I've kind of seen by checking for my own reference and for my own, curiosity, contacting some banks before we even came to Korea, it's around $50 is pretty much right. If you send it in foreign currency or in Korean won, the fee might be slightly lower. In other words, you're still going to get an exchange rate from the U.S. bank is going to exchange it into Korean won. You might get a little bit better exchange rate, not always sure, but you're subject to U.S. bank rates exchange rate, which likely includes a markup. So it's going to be negligible. But yeah, you won't get the best exchange rate with a U.S. bank or a Korean bank. Intermediary bank fees. If a U.S. bank doesn't have a direct relationship with a Korean recipient bank, the wire may pass through one or more intermediary banks. These banks also charge fees ranging from $15 to $30. So, in other words, if your little bank in Podunk, USA, cannot wire funds directly to your Korean bank, it'll probably go to a bigger branch or a higher branch, sister branch that is a lot bigger that does do international wire transfers. And so there might be an additional fee on that. But with the banks that we have, this wasn't a thing, at least in the banks that we checked with. So it's worth looking into and asking your bank about this. These banks can also charge fees ranging from 15 to 30. Fees are often deducted from the principal amount before it reaches the recipient, so the recipient gets less than what you sent. It's kind of like any type of wire transfer. You're going to wire X amount of money, say $10,000. And then they're going to remove their fees, so it could be like, $9,950 by the time that you get it. Same thing with like PayPal. You send money to somebody or one of those online apps. They're always going to take their little percentage out, and the person will not get the amount you entered, so you might have to adjust that. It's something to keep in mind. Receiving Korean bank. The Korean bank will likely charge a fee for receiving an international wire transfer. What are the odds? This is usually about 10,000 won, depending on the exchange rate, and about $7 to $9, but can vary from bank to bank. The fee is charged to the recipient. So again, they're going to get you coming and going either way, but it's something to keep in mind so that you're not surprised. Exchange rate markup. This is often the biggest hidden cost. When a U.S. bank converts your U.S. dollars to Korean won, either before sending it or if the Korean bank does the conversion, they will use an exchange rate that is less favorable than the mid-market rate, like you'll see on Google or Z or whatever. This difference is a profit for the bank. So I've actually talked to people who have gotten mad about this, and it's like, it is what it is. You can get mad and frustrated and have this get up your nose and ruin your day. But if you're living overseas, it's just something that you're going to have to do if you have to do it. So I don't really understand why people get mad at it. Does anybody want to pay more money than they should? No, you want to try to save money. But if you're living overseas, this is going to be a thing. Let's see. The markup can easily be 1% to 5% or more of the transaction amount. For a $1,000 transfer, a 3% markup means an extra $30. And that 1% to 5% is, if I remember correctly, on when I ended up doing this stuff and checking banks and wire transfer fees from our bank or, some larger banks, thinking about changing our account to bigger banks who do wire transfers. They broke it down into the fees and everything. So you can contact your bank and get into a detailed discussion with them on what to expect for a certain amount of money and what you can incur. So that way you don't go into this blind. So the estimates of cost, a U.S. bank fee is about $50. Intermediary fee can be $0 to $30. It's kind of rare these days because most U.S. banks will be able to wire money. Maybe back in the day, a number of years ago, it wasn't as common, but Korean bank incoming fee is, 10,000 won, $7 to $9, depending on the exchange rate. And you're going to lose some money on the exchange rate, whether it's in an American bank or a Korean bank. It just is what it is. So, therefore, you'd be looking at a total explicit fees ranging from $57 to $90. Plus the cost of the exchange markup rate. So with this being said, if you have a large amount of money, it would probably be better to wire transfer a large amount of money instead of doing a series of smaller transfers. Either way, you're going to get dinged with some fees. It is what it is, so we'll take a look at that. Let's go back and we'll take a look at a few more other things. You should look at the total fees from 57 to 90 plus the implicit cost of the exchange rate markup. How to get more precise figure and potentially lower costs? again, you're going to contact your U.S. bank and find out information. Ask the recipient, the Korean bank, about what their fees are. Of course, that might mean you need to either speak Korean or speak to an English-speaking service representative for that bank. There's also some other considerations that we have down here. So this is kind of interesting, is that you have WISE. WISE was formerly TransferWise, is known for transparent fees using mid-market exchange rate, usually much cheaper for international transfers. So WISE is an app that you can get on your phone. And I almost got this, but when we found out we could do our banking on post, this wasn't really a thing. You also have Remitly, Zoom, which is a PayPal service, WorldRemit. These online money transfer services offer lower fees and better exchange rate than traditional banks. So WISE has probably been the most talked about one that I've heard being over here in Korea from people who are not military retirees, people that don't have access to the bank on the military base. They're just doing their own thing. WISE is definitely one of those things. And I checked out those rates and they were better. So it's wise to be wise. Again, I've never used it personally, so I can't condone it. But from my initial look at their rates and fees, it was pretty good. Pretty good. Specialized Korean remittance services. Some service specialize in transfers to Korea and might offer competitive rates. Maybe, but most likely you might get a discount on your first wire transfer with certain apps or whatever. You know, everybody runs a discount or a special, so be on the lookout for that as well. So anyway, that's what we got going on. If you're in Korea or you're considering on retiring here in Korea, money is a big thing that you need to look at. Again, we talked about money in Korea. We talked about banking. We talked about the FBAR that you have to file with the IRS if you have more than $10,000 in a foreign bank account. Credit cards, Korean bank cards, a card that is tied, is a debit card that is tied to your bank account. I could actually get Korean credit cards. Again, it's kind of similar to the United States. You know, there's point systems and benefits, but we just don't see the benefit. None of those benefit us, so we just don't get a Korean credit card. We do use our U.S. credit cards here in Korea from time to time, so those are a thing. And for online shopping, for like Naver or Coupang here in Korea, that's definitely the two big shopping apps that you have. Is that can be all tied to your Korean bank account or your Korean bank card or even your credit card. Some people have said that they use their U.S. banking card or U.S. credit card. I haven't seen that personally, so I can't give that any justification on whether that works or not. I tried doing that and I couldn't get it to work, so I just stuck with our Korean bank card. The other thing we end up, exchange rates are definitely better at a money exchange store than in a U.S. bank or a Korean bank. And the Korean bank is going to charge you money to exchange that, and you're going to get a lower exchange rate. So that's why it behooves you, if you want to save some money, by doing it at an exchange store. And usually you'll find money at the airport. Those exchange rates are really not the best. But when you get onto the Korean economy and you get to the place where you're going to be living, you will usually find some Korean money exchange stores, and you can kind of go around and find out, well, what's your rate? Usually they're about the same. There are some times where there are some exchange stores that offer better rates because they're trying to make more money by doing more service to more people. And for here in where we're at, close to Camp Humphreys, we go to Victory Money Exchange, which is right outside the gate of the walkthrough gate here at Camp Humphreys. So that works out pretty good. Other things that we talked about, Korean banking, exchange. Exchange rate is really good. Matter of fact, it almost got up to about 1,500. Current USD to Korea won. And right now it's about 1401 is currently what we end up seeing. So, and different places that you'll end up, like Wise. Let's just take a look at that. We take a look at Wise here. This is the Wise app. Let me see. We can see it. Wise. And they show, whoa, not that big. So they show an exchange rate of 13.99 for 13.99. Of course, that's $1,000. So if we put $1 in there, you're going to get 13.99. So there is a little bit of difference in money exchange and Wise and stuff like this. So yeah, Wise is definitely a thing. Some of the features that they have, of course, multi-account send money, international wire transfers with fees as low as 0.1%. So again, Wise is probably a wise thing to do. Low fees, cheaper when you send, lightning fast, arrives in seconds, average based on transfer speeds, perfectly predictable. And so let's say we're going to send, let's just say $10,000. And we want to send in, of course, if I WON, South Korean won. So it'd be 13,902 wire transfer, and it does a little breakdown. So it shows the fee of $6.11. Our fee is $53. So total fees is $63.44. You could save up to $404 USD, and it should arrive by Monday. So the good thing is that it can be an app on your phone. You can do it online. And I remember going through, they redid the website from when I looked at it. So, and let's see, the pricing, send money, multiple currency, send and receive. Register an account is free. Sending money, 0.57%. Spending with your card. And you can see some of the things here. ATM fees, 2%, 2%. That's not bad. Multi-currency card, converting money, hold money in your account, free. Receive domestic payments, all that stuff. So yeah, it's Wise is not bad at all. It is a pretty good service. So with that, yeah, I would kind of recommend Wise. I haven't checked out Remitly or that Zoom or whatever, but Wise was the one way back when, over 2.5, 3 years ago. Wise looked pretty good, and it still looks like it has some pretty good rates. So. But anytime that you're going to send money from one place to another, there's going to be some type of fees in some way, shape, or form. Wise just ends up being a better version of that, and with fees and exchange and all that. So yeah, that's what we got going on. So hopefully it answered some questions of people who sent me messages asking about funds. How do you access them? Can you use U.S. credit cards, Korean banking? Let's see, what was some other questions? I can't remember. There's something somebody asked me about Korean banking. It was accounts. For some reason, this person wanted, can you get multiple Korean bank accounts? Yes, you can, but don't really see the benefit of it. It's not, in the United States, I had multiple bank accounts. Thank God we only have like one now. And I had like 3 or 4. But, in the United States, we're used to having multiple banks or bank accounts. It's kind of a thing. Here in Korea, you pretty much have your bank and that's it. And there's really no benefit to getting multiple accounts in Korea. You can do it. Maybe there are some Korean banks that offer better interest rates, or some type of investment vehicle that you're going to be doing. There's that opportunity as well, and I can see the reason behind that. But just to get multiple bank accounts just for the sake of having them, it's just kind of a pain in the butt, and there's just no real reason. I think at least for me, there's no real reason to do that. Let's see what else we're going to talk about. There's something else too. Can you fill me in? I I can't remember what it was. Man. Bank accounts, money, credit cards. I can't remember. So anyway, I guess that's the cue that we're gonna be done here. So with that being said, we covered all this information, and we're going to be closing this video out. For those of you who are watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate that. It would do me a solid, and it would help the channel grow, get more subscribers, more views, and the algorithm god would be appeased, and I would appreciate that. Trying to get more people. If you have any questions, there's my email, officialthevariedlife@gmail.com. I answer every single email. So whether it's about retiring in Korea or doing, hobby painting stuff, 3D printing or whatever, or you just want to say hi, I 100% answer every single email, even from the crazy people. And if you're watching me, that means you're crazy, so we're family. But I will answer the emails there. And if you also want to do me a solid, you could buy me a coffee, and the little scrolling ticker down there, those are the awesome people that have bought me coffee, and I have much respect for them. And many of them have bought multiple coffees for me. So I like that. And it's just kind of a thing that people do these days. When I watch content creators on 3D printing and hobby stuff or more technical things that I'm interested in, the videos and the work that they do, and I get some valuable information to that, I will buy that person a coffee. So it almost ends up being a wash. But any funds that do come back and get to me goes back into the channel. I do a lot of hobby stuff, and there is some upkeep for cameras and stuff like that. So that goes directly back into the channel as well. But if you don't, that's absolutely cool, and I totally understand that. As a minimum, like and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate that. Okay, so with that being said, we're going to let you go. I'm going to finish my latte, and I got to get some breakfast. And if you have any questions about being retiring in Korea or being an expat, things like that, put it in the comments section. Send me an email, or if you have ideas on a video that you would like me to do, hit me up, and I would appreciate that. Okay. We'll let you go, and we will see you on the next video. Peace. Yeah, good stuff.